Hello YouTube and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadres at long last. I know it's been a while since I really posted a good World of Warships video, or even really anything that the vast majority of my subscribers would actually be interested in. But, you know what, I decided to take a little bit of time away from the game and just kinda do other things, and basically just kinda decompress a little bit, especially considering the way World of Warships has been going with the grind and everything lately, with the events and whatnot. I just kind of wanted to do something a little bit different. To see where I had been spending a good chunk of my time over the last few weeks, just check out the previous video, which I will be linking up above, and you can see what I was actually getting myself into in another game called Space Engineers, which I had stumbled across by way of another YouTuber, and just thought the game looked interesting and figured I would give it a try because it just kind of looked fun and there was something I decided I wanted to try out on it. Having said that though, I am back in World of Warships, trying to get my grind through, and otherwise just basically back to the old shenanigans, as it were, in co-op matches. And, well, the two matches that you're going to see today, I hope don't disappoint, because they were actually a couple of the highlights so far from my regrind of the German destroyer line. First off here, of course, we have the Tier 6 German destroyer, the Gaede, and it is definitely one of my favorites along the German destroyer line, and for more reasons than one. I mean, the German destroyers, they do have at least reasonable torpedoes, they do have fast reloads, good range for the most part, and they do reasonable damage, as long as you can land enough of them on target. But what I really like specifically about the Gaede is that it has 150mm guns, which is a little bit of a divergence from just about any of the other destroyer lines in-game. I think the highest caliber outside of the German line that you really see is with the Russians at 130, or actually no, 139s from the French. So maybe the Germans aren't that much of a divergence anymore. But when they first came out, 150mm guns on a German destroyer was at least 20mm better than anything previous, up to and including the Russians. And one of the things that I love about that specifically is when you get it into a broadside position on, say, a battleship or a cruiser, these guns do a shit ton of work. Now, granted, they are larger caliber, they do reload a little bit slower than some of their other destroyer counterparts, but when you consider that they are larger caliber, their alpha damage is a little bit more improved, but especially the AP damage is substantially better. It's easy to see why and where I gain my love for these guns, for these destroyers specifically. Just because the raw damage output is phenomenal. In fact, at Tier 6, the Gaede with 150mm guns is fully capable of actually bow penning some of the Tier 5 cruisers. I'm specifically looking at the USS Omaha there. I've actually excelled at doing so on more than one occasion. Unfortunately, I don't have any matches recorded where I can actually showcase that, but it just goes to say how thin the Omaha's armor is when you can bow pen her with 150mm guns. It's like an ultralight of light cruisers in some ways. But that being said, the way these destroyers work, they're just phenomenal, and this is why I have actually opted to use them for my regrind, is because I enjoy them quite a lot. They're fun ships overall, and definitely ships that I feel very comfortable revisiting. Lord knows if I wanted to, I could go back and revisit, say, my US battleships, which is, to a point, a line that I enjoyed. But getting through the middle tiers, especially of the US battleships, is just pain that I really do not feel like putting myself through. The New Mexico has guns, sure, and the Colorado does have 16-inchers, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it only 15s? I could be wrong. But the big thing is they're just slow. And the biggest issue that I had with the Colorado, the Nagato, any of the mid-tier early tech line battleships, like the Japanese and the US battleships, they're just painful to work through because they're so slow. You can barely get anywhere over the course of a match, at least as far as co-op matches go. And quite simply, just that they, in my opinion, as far as the game mode I prefer, they just sucked. They were extremely painful to work through. In fact, I know that the Colorado, the Nagato, hell, even the Amagi, when I was playing the, trying to advance the Japanese battleship line, were all ships that I just completely bypassed by way of free EXP because I had no desire to work my way through them. And I do understand that the Amagi especially has gone through some changes in patches like a year or more ago, and is probably a little bit more comfortable to work with, but even so, I don't know. It's not a ship that I ever really... The few times that I did play it, I really did not enjoy it. It just seemed like it was a very lackluster performance by comparison to some of the other Tier 8s, like even the Bismarck, which has phenomenal secondary builds, or especially the US battleships like the Iowa or even the North Carolina. So there is that. Just going through the final results for the Gaede, I mean, I did a lot of work, 4 kills, and pretty substantial amounts of damage to the ships that I did kill. I also, I didn't really tank an incredible amount of damage just because I kind of kept myself, for the most part, out of harm's way. And I'm also going to admit that I had a large number of bonuses running because this is a tech line regrind, and as such I am just wanting to get through it as quickly as I can without having to free EXP everything, simply because I'm also still trying to save up 1 million free EXP for the next free XP ship that comes out that I'm interested in. Whenever the hell that happens to be, I'm thinking it might be the Siegfried, but again, I don't know when they're planning on releasing that. But I would still like to have the free EXP stockpiled, and so my grind is basically as if I were working through the tech line for the first time. But this is also something of a highlights video, so you're actually seeing the highlight video for the Gaede, and now we're moving on to the Liberect Maass, which is the Tier 7 German destroyer. And I do have to say that the Maass is a very capable destroyer in its own right, but I will also freely admit that the one thing that I miss about the Maass that I loved from the Gaede, and it's a very simple thing, and one thing that a lot of destroyer commanders really aren't too happy with, is I miss having the 150 caliber guns. I always felt like the 128s, at least for some things, were just a little underperforming. Honestly, it's something that I think would have been interesting to see developed a little bit better with the German line, is having higher caliber guns just be a inherent part of the line to make up for the fact that they had other things going for them. And in that regard, I suppose it could be said that the German destroyers do have a couple of other things going for them. Primarily, they have substantially better torpedo reload times. I mean, I know the Z-52 has 1-minute torpedo reload, especially with the legendary module applied to it. So there is that to be said, and it does make sense that you don't want something that's got too much alpha potential, I suppose. But even so, I think it would have been interesting to see like a heavy destroyer line come out of the German line overall. It would have been interesting to see what a Z-52 or the Z-46 even would have been capable of if they had been mounted with 150s instead of the 127s or 128s that they are primarily fitted with. Because I'll tell you what, I love these ships. I do love these destroyers, and I think just pulling 150s out of them would just make me love them even more. They are extremely fun ships, and I've always enjoyed playing with them. In fact, they're the only destroyer line outside of the Japanese gunboats, namely the Oribumo line, that I've really gotten up to tier 10, aside, well, okay. Shimakaze was another one that I wanted to push for just because I wanted to try out the torp builds and everything on that. But you'll notice I've been playing the game for almost 5 years now, and I have not gotten to the gearing. The highest I've made it on the US destroyer line is the Fletcher. For the Russians, the highest I've made it on the gunboat line is the Tashkent. On the, I guess you could say, more torpedo boat line, the highest I've made it there is the Ognavoy. As far as the French go, I still haven't actually unlocked the tier 8. And that's been in the game for a few months, and I certainly pushed my way reasonably quickly, granted by way of the early access, up to the tier 8s there. I mean, hell, even the British destroyer lines, I still haven't finished unlocking the Jetland, and that line has been out for a little over a year now. So it's definitely something to be said. I just haven't been getting as much enjoyment from some of the other destroyer lines as I did from the Germans. The Germans I just find to be very easy to work with. They're very versatile, very functional, and that's one of the things that kind of owed to my decision to go through the regrind. On top of the fact that I also have a commander for basically just about every single one of my German destroyers right now. In fact, even before I did opted for the regrind, I had commanders for every single one of my German destroyers. And in that regard, I'm also enjoying doing the regrind in this sense, because it's also allowing me the opportunity to get more skill points into my German destroyer commanders all through the line, basically just by playing through them as if I were regrinding the line in its entirety. In fact, I only just within the last couple of days got my Liebrecht Maass commander up to 10 skill points. And I'm very much enjoying the opportunity to just continue building him even further, because these are ships that, again, I have enjoyed basically since they came out. In other news, for those of you who have actually gone and watched the video all the way through to this point, I also celebrated my birthday yesterday. And I'm really not expecting anybody to come out and say anything or offer any congratulations or anything like that. I just throw it out there just for the hell of it anyway. But yeah, I'm 31 years old as of October 8th, so yesterday. And, well, I was kind of, well, I have taken the week off for that purpose, and to that end, I do hope to get at least a couple more videos out over the course of this week, just to get myself back into the swing of getting the videos done, and just to try and get at least somewhat through grinding out the Z23, because, well, I've been putting it off for a little while, and I do kind of want to get it done. But anyway, yeah, as I was saying earlier, though, about grinding out my commanders for the existing German destroyers. This, if this says anything, the 11,000 points that went into the commander on the Liebrecht Maass, he earned 1 skill point for this one match that you're watching here, and he didn't have too many skill points to begin with, so it actually went quite a long way for the match that you saw. Anyway, those are the highlights so far in my German destroyer regrind. I haven't really saved anything from any of the destroyers below tier 6. I do hope to hit you with a couple more highlights somewhere along the way as I go through the other ships, specifically the Z23, Z46, and ultimately upon re-reaching the Z52. But we'll see how that goes overall in the long run. Anyway, on that note, I suppose I shall go ahead and let everybody go. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you are new to my content. And well, if you want to gain access to future content. Anyway, I hope you all take care. Have a good one. Happy hunting, folks.